Hi, everyone. It's Austin Schwind. I'm running for House of Delegates. I wanted to address some of the rumors that are going around about whether or not we're on the ballot. Those rumors are true. There's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes. So, for those of you that don't know, there's paperwork that you have to give to your local district chairman, and he submits to the Department of Elections. That portion has gone great. There's also paperwork that you do separately that you send in on your own. And the deadline on the Department of Elections actual handouts for that paperwork is that it must be postmarked by April 3rd. And they also recommend that you send it by certified or registered, U.S. Postal Service. So on April 3rd at about 10:30 in the morning, we did that. We sent these by, there was two forms. We put them in two different packages. And we did registered mail and did priority service to hope that they get there a little bit faster, just for some extra security. Those two envelopes cost about $75 to send. We, before we sent them, we scanned all the documents. After we sent them, I scanned the receipts from the post office. I took pictures of them with the postage on them. Did everything we possibly could, dotted every I, crossed every T, and off they went to the Department of Elections. On April 4th, those went to North Carolina in the Postal Service system. They hadn't moved since April 4th. On the 10th, the Department of Elections sent out an email that said we didn't qualify to be on the ballot because they haven't received those two documents. Immediately, I responded and I said, and they copied my opponent and they copied the chairman of our district, the 37th House of Delegates district. I immediately responded back to them and I told them, like, no, that paperwork's in the mail. It was sent by the 3rd as you requested. It was sent by the service, the postal service that you recommended even. So no, like we're still good, aren't we? And if we're not, what do I need to do? And we started having phone calls with the Department of Elections. And at first they said, okay, that's fine. If it's in the mail, that's fine, which is strange because they knew that they had the receipts, they had the tracking numbers. But the next day I called them and they acted like it would be okay if we received these tomorrow. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why tomorrow? Like, I have no power over the U.S. Postal Service. And they said, well, we need to get the candidate list out because the localities need to do create their ballots, which makes sense. But there's no deadline on any of your paperwork. All of your paperwork says must be postmarked by the 3rd, which we did. So what's the actual hard deadline is the question that I kept asking them. And they wouldn't give me one. So it's impossible for me to set up a plan without a hard deadline. And then I sent them, because I had scanned these documents before we sent them, I sent them the scanned version of these documents to, does this satisfy the requirements until the physical versions show up? And I didn't get an answer. Okay, can I redo these documents and deliver them to Richmond myself? Didn't get an answer. Can I... We were just looking at all the different options, right? Because we have when you don't give answers and you don't get deadlines, you don't have any idea what you're supposed to do. My wife and I have been working on this for 3 months, almost nonstop. We're up until 3 a.m. working on the website, responding to people, working on making a logo and updating all the kind of issues pages. And there's so much work that goes into the campaign, doing documents like this, frankly, reading the campaign finance requirements. So for 3 months of work to come down to just something like this is not cool. I'm totally happy if we get our message out and the voters hear our message and they don't vote for us and we lose that way. I'm totally okay with that. That's the way the process is supposed to work. But for it to possibly end on what I think is two areas of incompetence within government, no, I'm not okay with that. So we started working on the post office side. We actually have gotten federal people involved on the post office. The post office, by the way, they don't even let me submit a service request until the 11th if there's been problems with your mail. So I can't even get information from them until 3 days ago, and the information you did get from them was, yeah, it's still in North Carolina. It's not, they don't give you any detailed information. Even if I said, okay, well, can I go pick it up so that I can deliver it by hand to Richmond? No, you can't do that. Okay. Well, can I forward it somewhere else? Can I forward it to a post office in North Carolina and I can go and show my ID and pick it up and go take it to Richmond? No, you can't do that. Well, can I forward it back to my original post office? Yeah, you can. How long is that going to take? I don't know. So, like, how can I plan for any of this stuff without a deadline? Not to mention, if the paperwork, when we submitted this stuff, when we downloaded all this paperwork in January and started working on making our schedule and making our goals, if the paperwork had said we must have these documents by April 10th, for example, not must be postmarked by April 3rd, but we must have them by April 10th, we would have had a completely different strategy on this paperwork. We would have finished it probably in early May and sent it then. That way, if the tracking got screwed up or the packages got lost or whatever, we'd still have a cushion to just drive them over to Richmond if we had to, recreate the document and drive them to Richmond. So we're in kind of a limbo now where the postal tracking finally on the 14th, it took 10 days to leave North Carolina, and on priority service, by the way. On the 14th, it finally says it's out in Richmond. We have not heard, for example, our federal contacts are telling us that it shows as out for delivery now because they supposedly have gotten an actual update from somebody in the post office. When I call the post office, they don't say that. They just say it's out in Richmond somewhere. So I don't know if it's going to get delivered today. And even if it does, I still haven't gotten any word from the Department of Elections that will be on the ballot if it does get delivered today. So we basically have done everything that has been asked of us. We've done everything. We have read everything, every single piece of information they've given us. We've followed it. And we might not be on the ballot. It got so far that when they told me this on the phone, the supervisor of elections told me, you can either run as an independent, drop out, or sue us. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we'll be on the ballot as Republicans in the Republican primary where we belong so that you guys have a chance to vote for a different option in this election, because as far as I've been able to tell, you've never had that opportunity. So I'll keep you updated. That's the latest. Hopefully today will be a good day. Y'all have a good one.